All right, so hopefully you all can see my screen and hear me okay as we give it a moment here before we get started. I will have the chat box open so I can monitor questions, everybody. So do me a favor and while you're logging in, open up that chat box as well as the Q&A too. That'd be great. Oh, and I'm going to switch my glasses so they're less glare. There we go. Well, doesn't seem like that helped, but we're going to go with it.
Okay. As people start rolling in, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Diana Sanchez with TCU Alumni Association, and I'm here with Hallie Crawford, our certified career coach and founder of Create Your Career Path. We're super excited to have you all join us. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to continue to get logged in, but we'll go ahead and get started with Hallie and 3 steps to setting meaningful career goals.
Awesome. Thanks, Diana. I really appreciate it. There may be a couple of things, everybody, that I'm going to want to post in the chat box. So do me a favor and locate that as we get started here, as well as locate the Q&A box too. And it looks like, Diana, I might need to post it like to you, and then you can repost to everybody, which is totally fine. So we are going to be recording today as well, and we're very excited to talk with you about how to create more meaningful career goals. Because what we've found with our clients and people that we've worked with is that we all understand and realize, obviously, we need to create and align our career goals or our professional goals with what our boss wants and what our organization wants us to do as well. But what we want to talk about today is how you can create kind of your own strategic career plan that may include some of those goals for your organization, et cetera, but also have really meaningful professional and career goals that are going to be important to you as a person and professional in the long run. So we're going to give you 3 steps to help you start to think about that side of things as we progress today. So really quick introduction. I'm a certified career coach, speaker, and author. I'm located in Atlanta, Georgia. We have coaches in different parts of the country. I've been coaching and training since 2002, so it's been a long time. More gray hair comes up every single year. Um, and I have an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and a master's degree from the University of Illinois. And I've been partnered with TCU for, I think it's been over 10 years, but very proud partner, fantastic school. Love helping you all with your career goals, job search, all that other good stuff. So we are recording today, and we will also share a link to download the slides with you. So one of the things that I wanted to recommend up front before we dive in is that because we're going to give you a lot of information, I would recommend picking one thing that resonates the most for you or makes the most sense based on where you are with creating your career goals. And then remember, you can revisit everything else later on. So pick one thing so that I don't know about you, but I go to these workshops in person, virtual, etc. And we're always like jazzed right afterwards, right? And then life gets in the way. The phone rings, things happen. So in order to take what you've learned here today, pick one thing you'll do in the next week and be ready to write it down for us because we'd love to hear about it at the end of the webinar. So here's our agenda for today. So what we assert or believe really strongly that in order to create meaningful career goals, that because they're meaningful to you, you're going to be more likely to achieve them and motivated to achieve them. So we want your goals to be a little bit deeper than, oh, I want to make this amount of money and these other things, is these 3 steps: to take a moment first to understand how you are defining yourself and your career as a professional, and be able to discard any external definitions that may not be working for you. So what happens to us sometimes with our career paths and honestly, this happens and can happen to us personally as well, is we might head down a path and we'll be like, okay, cool, this seemed like the right thing to do. But then people will call us and say, you know what, I've been chasing the wrong thing for a while and I didn't even fully realize it. And now I need to get realigned. And this is one of the things we're going to talk about today, how to not go down the wrong path. Step number 2 is going to be tools and the importance of clarifying and understanding your values. Because what we believe is that if you can align all of, or as many as you possibly can, your career goals to your values in some way, shape, or form, they are going to be more so the right goals for you. They're going to be meaningful for you and therefore the right ones, but also you'll be more likely to achieve them, as we said a second ago, too. And then key number 3, in order to create the right goals, is we encourage you to use our ideal career model. Remember, you can grab the slides. There's the QR code right there. And I will put in the chat box a link to the slides, and Diana will like reshare that for us. But we have an ideal career model that we want our clients to use in order to create their goals. And honestly, we want you to look at each of those pieces in order to say, what would be my goal under each one of these components and pieces? And this helps you create your own personal professional goals as well. We will have Q&A at the end, but do me a favor, and especially if you're just joining us, please open up the Q&A box as well as the chat box. If you have questions along the way today, please don't hold back. Go ahead and stick them in there. I'm happy to stop and answer. I love for these to be a little bit more interactive. So ask a question anytime. I'm happy to pause for a second and respond to anything. And if you do have any comments, and please do share your experience or your action steps with us too, or even any resources, for example, that you have found helpful for this purpose, please share those in the chat box. We'd love to see those too. All right, so let's talk about why having clear but also meaningful goals is a big deal. I mean, I think we kind of know on the surface why it's important. But if you take a look at the statistic on this slide, at least 50%, and I would argue that this is even higher, this percentage, but they say that clear goals boost their sense of motivation and sense of purpose in their work. So when we know what we're trying to achieve, but even more so, why we want to achieve it, why it's important to us as a person, it's going to be a much better goal. And that's what we're going for here. Now, as we said earlier, we realize that you can't just set your own goals and that's it. You can't ignore what your boss says or your organization says. We realize you have to take those things into account. And if you can attach any of those to your values and our model, that would be even better. But we want you to at least have your kind of own personal set of where you want your career to be in the long run, like in the next 3, 5, 10 years, because that's going to help you get what you want by mapping it out in advance and working towards it in the long run. And the good news is also that when you do this, what we have found over coaching since 2002, a long time, we love getting these emails from our clients saying, I'm in my brand new job. I love it. Thank you for showing me that my current position was actually the place to be. I just needed to make some changes. Infusing or finding a way to bring greater purpose and meaning into your work life, it actually is possible. Now, I'm not saying that everything's perfect all day long. There's always going to be things about your job to a certain extent that you may not enjoy. That's just the reality. We're not saying everything's perfect 100% of the time. But when you think about and consider the things we're going to be talking about today, what we've learned is that you can make slight adjustments, get clear on what your goals are, for example, and why you want to achieve certain ones in order to steer your career in the right direction, whether that's making a change or not. And we do find that employers are listening more than ever. Now, I realize that there's plenty, for example, plenty of employers out there that are, saying everyone has to come back to the office, et cetera. So again, this isn't 100%. But as a result of everything that's gone on in the marketplace in the past several years, et cetera, employers are trying to pay more attention to retention, I think, than they ever have before. And two of the things we want you to kind of make a note of and start to consider to help you with this process are on the bottom right of this slide. So one of the things, kind of a red flag for you, if during the course of your day or as you're thinking about your goals, if you find yourself saying should, well, I should be better at this, or I should feel like I care about this project or whatever, but I don't. Whenever you are telling yourself should in this way, you want to watch out for that because 9 times out of 10, if that's coming up for you, it's coming from somewhere else, not from inside of you, as in it's one of your priorities. And it may be that you're trying to talk yourself into something that actually isn't a great idea, not a good goal, etc. So the running joke with coaches, and this is really silly, but don't should on yourself. Okay. So just pay attention to the should because that can lead you to start to identify what some of those external definitions might be, which we'll talk about next. And then the second thing is, we've talked about this a little bit already, but to go a little bit deeper for just a moment, if you can try to align the majority of your career goals with your values, with your strengths, and with our ideal career model in some way, shape, or form, they are going to be more meaningful for you. The correct goals and ones that are going to give you a sense of satisfaction in addition to the compensation you want and all that other good stuff. So let's talk first about this external definition idea. We all know what a compass is. It's used for direction and navigation. And kind of like I alluded to earlier, sometimes we deviate from that direction that we want to go on, or we feel we need to go on, or we want to, or makes the most sense for us, I should say. Okay. And so what happens with a compass, as we know, problems arise when there's interference or deviation. So sometimes we do make the wrong choice. So for example, we were talking to a client yesterday, and in his situation, when he was graduating from college, understandably, he was like, well, I want to pick a really practical degree that I can get a job with. Makes sense, right? A lot of us have done that, and it makes sense to do so. So instead of picking, though, something that he might really enjoy and figuring out a way to make that happen, he has now been in banking for a little bit, around 20 years, give or take, and he doesn't like it, and he never really has. So his compass went off track because he was saying to himself, well, I should get a degree that's really practical. Now, I'm not sitting here saying be impractical and go crazy and run up a credit card bill. Absolutely not. But there are so many different jobs out there that we just don't even know exist, that it's worth taking the time to really think about, okay, what would give me greater meaning, and thinking about whether it's a different career path or what can I do to be more rewarded and fulfilled in my current job. And do I want to talk to my boss about it? Whatever that looks like for you. So the goal here is on the right side. The goal is to not just say, well, I'm supposed to do this, this, and this. So these are the choices I'm going to make professionally, but to look inside first for what meaning looks like to you and have your sense of yourself, your confidence, your purpose, and how you define yourself as a person and as a professional from the inside out versus the outside in. Because what happens to us if we, for example, start to compare ourselves to other people, we start to feel bad if we're not in that same place, for example. If we start to make choices according to things that our family, let's say, told us to do, or society told us to do, and those things are not true for us, we're going to go off track. So there's norms, there are external definitions, all of that. We had a client once who told us, well, I'm a lawyer because that's what my family does. We're all doctors or lawyers. And we were like, well, did you really think about it? And she's like, no, not really. So we're here to have you think about this more. So the first step on the left-hand side of the slide is to start to identify maybe where your career path is not quite as meaningful for you, or your current position? Like, what's going on? And are you, or have you been living your professional life? And by the way, this goes for your personal life as well, based on other beliefs, whether it's limiting beliefs or rules that just don't work for us or whatever it is. So another client that we worked with, when she first came to us, she said, you know what? I've not had a raise in 10 years. And we were like, what? And she said, well, I just always thought that that wasn't the right thing to ask for, or they couldn't really afford it, and those types of things. She had these beliefs in her head that held her back from going for what she should have gone for, right? And what happens to us in the middle of this slide is we get caught up in our daily lives and we start to define ourselves externally based on our role, our profession, our salary, strengths, other things from our past, which is normal. It's human nature. And in some cases, we might have some inherited norms, rules, beliefs, etc., from other places that don't fit us. So, for example, it could be to be successful, I have to make X amount of money. Otherwise, I'm not successful. So it's a really good idea to at least spend a couple of minutes first shedding these external definitions, because if you're holding on to them in any way, shape, or form, they're not going to allow you to work on the other steps that we're talking about today, because you're kind of living under a shell, if you will. So the goal here is to identify what they are and start to remove those definitions that don't work for us anymore and that we don't want, so that we can start to really make choices and set goals based on what's inside of us and most important to us. Now, I'm not saying, again, go crazy and go against society so that you end up in financial ruin. Like, again, we still have to be practical, and I get that. But what we have found in a good way is, if you look at the right-hand side, if you can start to make even small adjustments in your professional life now, align things a little bit more with your values, prioritize your tasks maybe differently, put a little bit more time into certain projects that you enjoy more, or start on those at the beginning of the day, because then you can kind of ride that wave of motivation. Small changes equal really big results. That's what we find with our clients. So you don't have to necessarily do some really dramatic things in order to make this stuff happen. Even like small shifts can make a really big difference in how you feel about your work, and how you can set more meaningful goals. Okay. And part of the reason why we're talking about not having your sense of self come from external circumstances is because those can change. We all know, especially now. And Diana, let's go ahead and launch our first poll if we could. Do you think you have some of these limiting beliefs, etc.? But we all know these days that we can lose our jobs, especially given this year. It's been pretty rocky and rough. We might not make as much money in the next position that we get, et cetera. And so if we're defining ourselves or too attached to these external ways that we are, like creating our sense of ourselves, then, and those things change, then things fall apart. So as much as we can, we want to have that sense of self from the inside out, and have you feel like, as much as possible, you can be authentic and yourself at work. We'll give you a moment to fill out this poll. And we're kind of asking here, by the way, whether you feel like, in a short kind of sentence, if you feel like you're being totally true to yourself versus, ooh, I've got these inherited and external things that are kind of getting in my way. That's the basic gist. And please be honest, that's why we're here today. So please know if a lot of you are saying the inherited and external, that's why we're here. We're helping you kind of shed that shell, so to speak. And let's go ahead and look at our results if we could, Diana. That'd be great if you could share them, because I'm curious what these numbers are. The good news is I'm finding that the numbers are creeping up, like people are starting to get the gist of this, which is great. And it looks like that's showing up in our poll. So fantastic. If you feel like you're being true to yourself, that's great. Keep doing that work. And quick reminder, and then if we can keep showing the results here for just a second, that'd be great. it's a good idea to reevaluate your goals and your values like at least twice a year, once a quarter. Because just so you know, as we age, as our life circumstances change, and like we have different things going on in our lives, these values and how we honor them can change a little bit too. So, always good to keep tabs on these things over time. And for those of you who are feeling like inherited and external, it's totally okay. This is one of the first things that I would recommend you write down is start to say to yourself and write down, okay, so far what I'm thinking based on what Hallie's talking about today, these are some of my ideas and I want to journal about this. Like you might like keep a piece of paper on your desk for the next like 5 business days so you can write down what other beliefs may be coming up that you start to realize you need to shed. And this is just this Mobius strip is just a really good representation of kind of what we're going for, that your external world, within reason as much as possible, is flowing and mirroring, so to speak, your internal world. So let's take a look at these action steps that you can take in addition to what we just discussed to help you understand what's going on here. So, where do you think you're defining yourself incorrectly or externally? And one of the ways that you can figure this out too, but also figure out your meaningful career goals is to write down a paragraph about what does success mean to you professionally? What does it look like at this stage in your life and in your career? Is it different than when you first started out, your career path, etc.? This can help you get some clarity about what we're talking about today and the right goals for you. Another action step, which can be helpful to not just understand how you're defining yourself and if it's the right way, so to speak, or true to you, but also to help you clarify if your goals are on track, is to be really clear about what your strengths are. And if you are leveraging those strengths at all in your current position or career. And also, if you're leveraging them in the way that you want to, because sometimes clients will tell us, well, yeah, I'm using this strength all the time, but it doesn't give me a lot of joy or satisfaction because I'm using it for the wrong organization or in a way that doesn't really give me any meaning. It's kind of for the wrong purpose. And those things have to be aligned too. A third thing that you can do, and there's actually a career vision board ebook, a free ebook we'll give you a link to in just a moment. But if you can start to think about what you want your story to be. So I'm going to say 2 things here related to number 3 on this slide. Imagine yourself in 10 years. What qualities do you want to have, as well as the goals you want to have achieved as a professional? How close are you now to those? And how can you make that happen? And one of the other things to write down that we always like to ask our clients too, when you are 80, sitting in a rocking chair, talking to friends, family, kids, grandkids, whatever it is, what do you want to say about your career? And if you think about that, it's kind of like the exercise where people will write their own obituary, but we're talking about this in a different way. That can start to help you figure out the goals that you want to be achieving and get clarity on those that are going to really matter to you at the end of the day. And then finally, we're going to talk about number 4 a little bit more in the next couple of slides. So, starting to identify what would be meaningful for you and what fulfillment looks like for you. Write down what fills you, what you're passionate about related to work. And do you honor those things on a regular basis? And by the way, if those things are not present in your current position or career path, what changes can we make and what do we need to do a little bit differently? So those can help you start to identify what some of your goals need to be. As part of this fulfillment piece, let's talk about step number 2 and really understanding what your career values are. One of the things we recommend our clients do to understand their values, and remember, revisit this on a regular basis because I promise you they will change. I'm 52, and while my top 2 values are still, well, I would say my top first value, my top number 1 value is still the same that it was when I was in my 20s, and it's still the number 1 value. But I'll tell you after those, because prioritizing them is really important, prioritizing your values in terms of importance to you, it makes a difference in how your life and career looks. If you flip the order of the first two, even, it can change things dramatically. So for me, authenticity is still my top value, number one, but the rest of them have moved around since I had my child who's a teenager and he's about to leave to go to college. So it's going to shift again. So it doesn't have to just be about kids. There's all these different things that can happen in our lives, intentional or not, that can influence the order of our values, but also how we live by them and define them. The definitions can change too. And one of the ways, if you feel like you need to identify your values for the first time or reevaluate them, is to dig underneath your dreams, your interests, your passions. So there's the reason why there's a mermaid on this slide is because as a kid, for me, I grew up in Florida. We went to Weeki Wachee all the time. I can't remember if it still exists. I think someone said it does, but maybe they were bought out by someone else. Anyway, as a child, I was like, "Ooh, I would love to be a mermaid. That looks so cool." And although as an adult, I realized that probably wasn't the most practical thing for me to do for different reasons, nothing wrong with it, there were values, clues to some of my values in that childhood dream. And there are clues to some of my professional values in the things I do today as hobbies and TV shows that I watch, etc. So even though we are not sitting here saying that for everybody, like if you've got a hobby, that's the right career path for you and you should go do that. Think about what all of these things are that you're naturally drawn to, because those can give you clues to what's deeper there and what you really value as a person, and start to translate that into, okay, does that mean something for me professionally? And if it does, how does that look? So, for example, one of the values here for me was creativity. Like I thought, like entertaining people and educating them, and like creativity and beauty, because these are really pretty, they've got those cool outfits on, whatever. The point is, part of what I love doing is educating people as a career coach. That's like the main thing that I do all day, every day. But I love trying to do it in a more entertaining way through webinars like this and in other ways too. So look at these dreams, interests, passions, and even if that's not the right career path for you per se, really good possible clues to what could be rewarding and fulfilling, and things that you may want to change a little bit, even in your current career path. I'm going to put the link to our career vision board ebook if you want to download that, because some of our clients, to help them define meaningful career goals overall, but fulfillment as well, is again, like we said, how do you define success? You can just journal about that for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to take that long. We also have some clients, especially who are really visual, they love creating a career vision board, and you can start to say, okay, what do I need to incorporate in my career path now? The other element or exercise we have people do is the second one on this slide on the left. We will have people think about and write about and even share with someone a peak experience in their life. And we like for clients to think about a personal peak experience. It doesn't have to be professional, because what we find is if they focus on the personal first, they're going to get closer to things that are really important to them versus, well, I should have a career value of accomplishment and honor, or ethics and integrity, those types of things. Nothing wrong with those, but we want it to come really from deep down inside of you versus, oh, I should have these on my list. And when you think about that peak experience, write about and tell the other person what was cool about it for you. Because I promise you, in retelling it and writing about it for yourself and looking back at it, and really focusing less on these are the exact details, but more about why was this cool for me? That's going to give you your list of values. And if you can then start to identify like your top 3 career values and start to think about how you can align your career goals with those, you're going to be in much better shape and doing what we're talking about today. So let's talk a little bit more about not just values, but our third step, aligning your goals with our model. Now, if you take a look at this for just a second, you'll see at the bottom right is where we start, so that you know we go across the model and then up, we finish up the blue first, and then we go to the two other pieces that are white. So this model is a model I developed when I first started coaching a long time ago, and we keep it updated. Um, that shows you the elements to the right career fit, and making sure that not just you're in the right career, but you're in the right job, and how to create the right goals for yourself. Bottom line, we want you to have a goal for each area. That's going to help you create a robust plan and list of goals that's going to cover all of your bases. So we start with fulfillment and values here, because here's what we find is if you get these covered, the other ones are going to fall into place more easily, and you're going to get closer. You're going to push yourself to get closer to something that's really going to work for you versus, for example, saying, well, I want more money, so I'm just going to stay here and get promoted. Kind of like the bank guy that we were talking about earlier. He stays because he gets a bonus every year, and they do this, strategically to keep people around. And as a result of that, he just kept chasing compensation the whole time. Now, we're not going to tell him, go do something else where you don't make any money. That doesn't serve him either. But we start with this fulfillment piece because that's going to help you think outside the box about things that you can do to make these better goals and choices. Then we want you to look at your interests. What have you been really drawn to and interested in your life and in your career over time that gives you some clues to things you want to start incorporating into your current career path? Then we want you to have some goals aligned with your strengths. And for example, if you're saying or thinking, my current job isn't aligned with my strengths or enough of them, maybe it is fulfilling or using the majority of them, but one's kind of missing. So how can we create a goal to incorporate that? A goal for what kind of experience you want to get over time to keep you challenged, to keep you fulfilled, to leverage your strengths. See, they all kind of go together. It's like a puzzle where you're putting the pieces together. What kind of educational goals do you want to have for your career? I find, for example, that if I go to at least one conference every year, I am like jazzed and kind of lit up for at least several months after that. So if I can do like once or twice a year conference education wise, then it's not just a feather in my cap, right? Adding to my experience and education, but it also is something that is fulfilling to me too. So have these educational goals. We also want you to have goals that align with your personality type. Like, I really want to make sure that the work environment I'm in supports me as a person. I really would like to, for example, work part-time remotely somewhere in addition to what I'm doing now. So personality type and environment go very close hand in hand. But the bottom line here is that as you're moving up or around in your career, and for example, creating your daily schedule, working with your boss, working with your coworkers, you want to make sure that the way you're doing that is a fit with whether, for example, you're introverted or extroverted, and learning how to work within your personality type, educate others about your personality type, because those strengths also kind of play into your natural strengths too. Your goals need to include, like, how am I going to make sure I remain in the right work environment? And this again is the right culture of an organization. Sometimes, for example, clients come to us and say, you know what? I've loved my organization. They just got bought out and things have changed dramatically. And they try to stay. But if the work environment has changed, sometimes they feel like they can't do it. And we don't want you to just talk yourself into it. So really pay attention to what work environment is really best for you as a person based on your strengths, the right coworkers, the best boss that you can have. Knowing again, as we've said, everybody, we're not saying you can control for all of these, but do as much as you can to create those relationships in the right way. And then finally, last but not least, is your career goals for compensation. What do you want to be making at the end of your career? And even if you're not sure right now, let's start to do some research and think about it. Create a budget for yourself for the things that you'd like to have. So the bottom line here is to align your goals as well with our model because it helps you ensure that you're creating a goal for each of the areas that you really need to in order to make sure you're covering all of your bases, if you will. Because here's what we find is if people don't pay attention to, let's say, the work environment, and the work environment either changes on them, but they try to stick it out because they think they should. Or if they get a new job and they realize, ooh, this is not the right work environment. It's the right role for me and the right like industry, but not the right place, then they end up unhappy. So this is why we want you to make sure you're covering all of your bases. Now, if you feel like you need more help with this, I always like to just mention this really, really quickly. We do offer a discount for alumni on our services. So if you do want to talk with me about how we can help you with this and help you stick to it, because sometimes that's a problem too, happy to chat. The link is in the chat box, the QR code's here. Please mention that you came from TCU. We love our partnership. We're happy to give you a discount and make it work for your budget, whatever that looks like. And it's an opportunity to chat with me for a minute to find out if working with us is the right thing for you to do at this point in your career. So the third thing that we want you to think about, it piggybacks on what we've already discussed with the strengths. But I really like to talk about this one in greater depth for a moment with people because whether or not you're leveraging kind of your natural talents and abilities in a job and in a career path is not just going to impact whether you're successful at it, whether you get that promotion, more money, all that good stuff, but also whether you're fulfilled in that job. Because a lot of times people will tell us too, like, my job's not really rewarding. It used to be, but now I'm not leveraging my strengths in the same way because I got promoted or because things changed or my boss changed. And this strengths piece, in addition to values, is really, really important. So it's a good idea at all times to be very clear on what your top strengths are, because it also helps you sell yourself for that promotion, that next role, everything else too. So if you look on the left-hand side, do a quick self-assessment and say, okay, in the past month, job-wise, where have I lost track of time? Or what have people complimented me on? And just make a note of those and start to identify what those themes are. And by the way, if no one's complimented you, ooh, there might be a red flag there. Are you not using your strengths in the way that you want to or need to? And if you're saying, I haven't really lost track of time, could be a possible red flag to make some larger changes too. The second possible thing to always be clear on, or in order to help you be clear on your strengths at all times, is we like the Strengths Finder assessment. It's low cost. It's strengthsfinder.com. You can choose the lower cost option that gives you your top 5 strengths. It's fantastic. The reason why we like this is this self-awareness and understanding of what you bring to the table, but also where your challenges are. Here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm not so good at will enable you to work so much better with your coworkers, be more productive and effective, and also help you align your goals in the right way too. We talked about the third bullet point already, interviewing other people. And then finally, make a list of those strengths that you want to start using more frequently or maybe in a different way in order to help you figure out the right goals for you. And I think this might be our last poll. Let's go ahead and launch the second poll because we are curious how many people out there, and we may have one more. So just bear with me for a second as we go through the slides. But we're curious how many people feel like, yeah, I do feel like I'm leveraging my strengths on a pretty regular basis, or how many people feel like, not so much. This could give you a clue to what some of your top priority goals might need to be. So while you're completing this poll, just by the way, you can also use our career model to do a quick assessment of what's working in your current job and what's not working. Because in each of those areas, that can start to help you identify those goals, but also the priority of them. Because, ooh, these 3 are really important to me. and they're out of whack. So I need to, focus there first. So we'll give you a moment to complete this poll, and I appreciate you doing it. And I am really curious about this one because I know there's been so many changes in the workforce, et cetera, in the past, since the beginning of the year, especially. And we'll go ahead and share our results and see what we have. Okay, so thank you for being honest about this. And this sounds like a really big one for people because a lot of people are saying no, not regularly using them. This could be a main cause of dissatisfaction, lack of motivation, etc. So if you can identify what those strengths are that are really most important to you, and if there's a way you can start leveraging those in your current position, that would be great. And even if you realize I can't do that here in the long run, and let's just say you decide you need to go get a new job, okay, fine. But see if you can start to leverage those more now because it will help you feel a little bit better. And for those 17%, that's great. It could be other things that you need to be working on in terms of your goals. So I'd like to start getting to our Q&A here. And I just wanted to remind you of the steps that we talked about today, that discarding external definitions. And from your definition of success, identifying what the right goals are for you and making sure that none of your goals are like should goals. Now, we realize, like we said before, there may be some goals on your list that come from your boss and your organization. We can't just ditch those. I get that. But is there a way to tack those onto or attach those to something that would actually be meaningful for you? We were talking to a client yesterday and she was saying, you can define service in a lot of different ways. And it's true. And she's been able to kind of morph just enough. It still fits for her, but see the work that she's done in the past as like a mortgage broker and lender, actually, as I'm serving other people, I'm helping them buy their first home or their dream home or whatever. Whereas someone else might be like, that doesn't seem like service to me. They have a different definition of it. But sometimes we can kind of redefine certain things in order to match what we're doing. The second possible action step could be defining fulfillment. Coming up with your list of career values, the new ones, how you're defining them now, and crafting those goals from there. And then finally, attaching those goals, establishing a goal for each element of the model as much as you can. So we would love it if you would take out your pen and paper and write down one action step for this week. Maybe it's on your phone, whatever is best for you. I'm still old school. I like writing things down. As we wait for questions to come through, feel free to download the slides, schedule a consult like we said. And I saw a heart pop up. I love those little emoji things. I believe when we were talking about values and like having our goals, like digging underneath those dreams, passions, interests, etc., to just help us ensure that we're still on track with what our values are. And I appreciate that. If there's any questions related to that or anything else, please feel free to share. And while we're waiting for those, Diana, anything that you would like to say or ask to kind of kick us off?
Yes, I did get a couple questions sent to me. So one of them is someone is asking what the coaching experience is like working with you all.
Sure. So we do one-on-one live coaching, individual coaching. We have courses and we also have boot camps. So there's kind of three ways to work with us. Think of it a little bit as like a coach, like an athletic coach for your career, where we have tools and resources, but the main value is like the talk time that you get with us, in addition to having access to those resources. With the individual coaching, we talk with you once a week, every other week, whatever cadence is best for you. With our boot camps, those are usually like 2 or 3 sessions in a group on one specific topic. And then we have courses that you can work through some of our exercises on your own and then add on that one-on-one coaching. And we take a life coaching approach to our work. So we're talking about this meaning and these values like we discussed today, so that we make sure you're doing all of the right things. So thanks for asking.
Of course. We also have how often should I reassess my values?
Yeah, so I think when I talked about this earlier, I may have said kind of two different things. So with your career goals, just all of them in general, values and otherwise, assess and reassess those quarterly. It's good to have just a very quick kind of quarterly planning session with yourself and or with your boss or a mentor who's appropriate. This is one of the things we do with our clients. And then your values, though, career and otherwise, I think that can be twice a year because time flies. Sometimes, yes, dramatic changes can happen during shorter times during the course of the year. But because our values are kind of things that are part of who we are as a person, and we don't tend to change like that dramatically within a really short period of time, I think that like twice a year is good for values. Just kind of check in on things. I would say that if you have had any big life or career changes recently, or whenever that does happen to you, during that time or right afterwards, that's also a good time to check in on things. Because sometimes when we have like a bump in the road, a really good shift or something even like that's positive, that can change our priorities a little bit. So add that on there too.
Okay, and then last question, what is the best way to approach my superiors about my career goals?
Oh, sorry, Diana, could you say it again?
Oh yeah. What is the best way to approach my superiors about my career goals?
Yes. Okay. So great question. Sorry, I've got a fan going and I had a hard time hearing you. Um, when you're thinking about, or if you're thinking about approaching your supervisor, and by the way, Alexis, the webinar will be shared, the recording afterwards. And if you look a little bit further up in the chat box, or here, you can grab the slides too. So here's the deal, right? A lot of people understandably are like, I'm not going to just go to my boss and tell him these are my values, change my job, right? I get that. This is a conversation that A, you can have over time. You can start with one small thing and see if that helps. You can do some things on your own or try some different things to see if that helps as well. But if you're going to and need to approach your boss at any point, I would be approaching it as not just how this is going to help you be more effective, efficient, and successful, but how that happening is going to impact the bottom line for the organization as well. So I feel like and am confident, for example, that I can be a better team member and therefore get these projects done, faster, on time, under budget, whatever it is, speak their language of the bottom line too. When you're making these requests, and don't go in and just say, this is how it needs to be, and that's it. Obviously, that's not going to go over well. Let them know you want to talk about something. You welcome their feedback on it. You're open to ideas. You have ideas or suggestions about what you feel might work, but also solicit, and ask them, can this work? Or is like a variation of this something that could be possible? So don't hesitate to do that, like, especially if you feel like you can be a little bit more honest with your boss, just make sure that you're couching it in the right way, so to speak. That's a good question too. Thanks for asking.
Of course.
All right.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Maybe we answered them all. And I feel like too, this is a pretty deep, one of our deeper webinars. It's not just here's how you fix your resume and your LinkedIn. So I do understand, and I'll put this in here just by the way, that if you have a question later on as you're kind of noodling on this, and Diana, I believe, usually sends this out as well. I just put my email address in the chat. If you do have a question later as you're pondering all of this, please feel free to email me. I think it went into direct
Oh,
message back to me, Diana.
yes.
I know
I
I
just fixed
always
it.
do that. Well, in the little like buttons down there, I can never figure out what they mean. They need to fix their icons because I think it's confusing. So yeah, lots to noodle on and think about. And Diana, is there anything you want to announce? Or are you guys kind of good and set?
Yes, so thank you again for another wonderful webinar session. I know it'll be very helpful for all of the people that want to learn more about setting meaningful career goals. We will be sending out a follow-up email with a recording of today's session, so be on the lookout for that. We appreciate your time and thank you again, Hallie, and we look forward to seeing you all again. And go Frogs!
Thanks. Good luck, everybody.